Duke basketball countdown to craziness is right around the corner. We've got some recruiting updates for you, what to expect out of Cooper Flagg this upcoming season, and so much more. A mailbag episode on Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We talk a lot about Duke football and Duke men's basketball. The football team getting ready for that big game coming up this weekend, taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels. But we get closer to the start of basketball season, so we've got a mailbag to dive into with you today. Typically, we've got Mailbag Mondays. We'll throw it on a Tuesday this week because we had to recap that awesome Duke football win over MTSU yesterday. Kevin Connelly stops by to be a part of the show here today. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Watch the show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends. Your support just means so much to us here at Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, very excited to welcome him here into the program. Kevin Connelly joins us on the show today. Kevin, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, JJ. How about yourself?
Very well. Thank you for asking. I'm excited that, one, we've got a good start to this Duke football season, and now we've got basketball right around the corner as well. You know, sometimes over the years, Duke's never been this big football program, but the last 4 or 5, they've had some good things going. So it makes this time of year even more exciting because we can kind of jump back and forth between basketball and football. There's not as much of an emphasis on trying to count down the days until basketball season. No,
you're right. And I think a lot of people had a little bit of questions, and rightfully so, that questions needed to be answered. How this football team was going to play, and especially with a new coach, a new head coach, and a new coaching staff coming in. And we talked about a little bit over the summer about how important the first 4 games were and starting 4-0. And just because now you're just 2 wins away from being bowl eligible, and they went 4-0 and they handled their business, and it wasn't always pretty, but a win is a win at the end of the day. And again, you don't want to be a glass half empty type of perspective, but 2 more wins and you're going to a bowl game. So but still a lot of football left to be played. So hopefully you can go to 5-0. Obviously, there's a lot of problems right now with that North Carolina football program, and you get them at home. So it feels like a great time to win back the victory bell, get a big rivalry win, and move to 5-0.
And not to mention the fact, as we discussed yesterday, Kevin, our friends over at FanDuel had the Duke over-under at 5.5 wins going into this season with Manny Diaz taking over as the head coach. They've got their first perfect non-conference start since 2018. They're near that 5.5 win total already, and we haven't even played the first ACC game.
Yeah, that first big swing game was the road game at Northwestern. I think they were an underdog in that game, a slight underdog, and they come away with the win. And yeah, obviously a lot of things can change in the ACC. I think Florida State's on this schedule, and when you looked at Florida State in the beginning of the year, you're like, oh man, that's going to be a tough game. And now Florida State looks like a very beatable team. So it's interesting, and I'm really excited to see if this team's able to come out and continue to keep the bleeding on this North Carolina team that just got 70 hung on them by James Madison team at home.
Coming up on Saturday, Duke and North Carolina in football. All right, that's it for football today. Switching gears, basketball the rest of the way. An awesome mailbag episode. We, of course, take your questions on X at LO_Blue Devils or by sending us an email, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com. Leave your questions down in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. Kevin and I love hearing from you guys and answering these questions as we go throughout the course of the show. So coming up on October 4th, we've got Countdown to Craziness, and a question comes in asking us, what's your favorite part of Countdown to Craziness, Kevin?
It's a good question. I'm always a fan of the scrimmage. I'm always a fan of that 1/2 scrimmage, seeing what the guys can do out there. It's your first look at them for the most part, as a unit, as a team in live action. So I know a lot of people love the introductions, love the dance moves. I love when you get down to the nitty gritty and you're playing that scrimmage.
Without a doubt, the intros are a big thing, man. And it's a chance for these guys to kind of show their personality, to hear how well received they are by the Duke Cameron Crazies that are on site there at Cameron Indoor. I love that over the last several years, Countdown to Craziness has featured both the Duke men's and women's basketball team for all of those players to be recognized on this night. And then, yeah, these guys coming out, man, and busting a move right away. In John Shire's first Countdown to Craziness as the head coach, he joined in on the dancing parade. It's UNC week, so we'll always talk about, Roy Williams was known to bust a move or two at their late night with Roy kind of countdown event prior to the season. So, dude, the dance moves, pretty awesome. I think I'm with a lot of people really excited to kind of see that happening. All right, next one comes in, and we were asked, do you see any comparisons in Cooper Flagg to Christian Laettner? Because I've seen this out there a whole lot, man, and maybe how they're received as the player, looking at their play styles as well. What do you think when you see this question? Do you see any comps in Cooper Flagg to Christian Laettner?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question as well, just because I see how people can make the comparisons. I'm going to say no for a couple of reasons. Christian Laettner, from day one, he stepped on Duke's campus, impacted winning and going, to 4 Final Fours, winning a couple of national championships. So, that's a high bar already to clear if you're comparing the similarities in their games. But another reason I say no is because I'm not the biggest fan of comparing generations of basketball players. The players nowadays are so advanced in terms of their skill and their athleticism. If you put Christian Laettner on this Duke team as a freshman when he was at Duke, is he that much of a needle mover? You get what I'm trying to say? Is he, if you took Cooper Flagg off this team, put Christian Laettner on this team, is the national championship hype still there? And just because basketball was played a different style back then, it was a lot more physical. You can get away with a lot more. And now it feels like it's more finesse and seeing what guys can do and shooting 3-pointers. And you're not really going down and banging bodies in the post. I really do think it's difficult to compare players from different generations like that, like a Cooper Flagg and a Christian Laettner. But with Christian Laettner, obviously he had the very polished inside game. He had a mid-range game. Cooper Flagg, we know, can score at all 3 levels. So I do understand the question, and you can draw probably some comparisons from each player's game. But I just hate comparing players and skill sets from different generations.
Certainly fair. I think you kind of look at the hype and exposure around these guys, and you could see some similarities as well. Let's throw it out there. The Duke white guy gets so much hate over the years, and that's kind of where Cooper Flagg is as he's stepping in to the shoes. Similar in size, Laettner listed at 6'11", Flagg listed at 6'9". I do think there are similarities in their game. In 2024, the hype train much more advanced than in 1992 when we're trying to think about the recruiting services that would have been out there at the time, or in the early 90s as Laettner is coming on campus to be a part of the Duke basketball team. And then talking about the Olympic runs, right? That's why I said 1992 with Laettner's run on the Dream Team. And then this past summer, we saw Cooper Flagg as the only high school player going into his freshman season invited to participate in the select camp for Team USA prior to their Olympic run. And there's a lot of buzz and exposure over his performance representing the country. I think those are some big similarities that we've seen between the two.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think you also have to remember 1992, I believe, was one of the first times basically a whole list of NBA players went to the Olympics to reclaim gold for Team USA in basketball. And it came down between Shaquille O'Neal and Christian Laettner as the college players that were going to go. And there was only one spot for them. And Shaquille O'Neal has openly said that, it deserved to go to Christian Laettner, even though Shaq had a much better professional career than Christian. And then with Cooper Flagg, obviously he's in the select camp, but he doesn't really make the team, even though there is an injury defection in Kawhi Leonard, but they call up Derek White instead of bringing somebody from that select team on. So, in terms of the trajectories of their college careers, you certainly can make comparisons between the two.
All right, let's go ahead and we'll take our first time out here on today's show. We've got more of your questions. Again, it's a mailbag episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and we're going to be back here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. It's the brand hardworking people like you and I have trusted for over 20 years, giving us an alert, energized feeling needed to get through a busy and hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots. They're right at the cash register of nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. You can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. So awesome. You can go now to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. Use our promo code LOCKEDON at CFB to receive 20% off the order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Again, 5hourenergy.com using promo code LOCKEDON at CFB. Go to 5hourenergy.com. 5 Hour Energy is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Kevin Connelly's here with us. He's the site expert for Ball Durham. We're moving forward with our mailbag episode today. Talk a little recruiting now. Someone writes in and asks, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com, how critical are the Boozer twins to building our 2025-2026 roster? Of course, Carlos Boozer wins a 2001 national championship for Duke. He's got twin sons that are seniors in high school right now, both top 20 recruits in the entire country. They're down to 3 schools, the Duke Blue Devils, the Florida Gators, and the Miami Hurricanes. How critical are they to building the roster for next season, Kevin?
I wouldn't call them critical. I would call them important. And the only reason I wouldn't call them critical is obviously there's this big emphasis on the transfer portal. So I wouldn't say if Duke doesn't get the Boozer twins that they're really in a hole for next year, or they could not be that great. And also, you look at this roster, and it has guys with experience left. Obviously, the big freshman class. Yes, you're going to lose some of them. You might lose Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster as well. But I would say they're very important to how the roster shapes out in 2025, 2026. But I wouldn't call them overly critical by saying if Duke doesn't get them, then they're going to be in a world of trouble for next season.
I think that's fair. I am optimistic that they're going to end up in Durham. I think a lot of people are starting to feel more and more that way. There's a crowd out there that potentially thinks maybe they want to go and do their own thing and create their own path. And hey, they've got a right to do that if they so choose. But with what Duke's able to offer, the connections that Duke has made at the NBA level, Duke's always had one of the best recruiting classes in the entire country. I think they're going to want to be a part of that. And when you're looking at building next year's team, looking at Cameron Boozer, who can fit in as one of your big men on the inside, Caden Boozer as more of a ball handler, I think they're really important pieces. Critical, I think that's fair to not go that far, Kevin. But no, when I start to build that roster for next year, I do think a lot of guys off of this year's team are going to get a chance to go to the NBA. Hopefully not too many guys transfer away, but that's a reality that some of these things will happen. Duke's also going to have a couple of players like Mason Gillis, who's going to run out of eligibility entirely, so he's going to have to move on, which is going to open some spots as you put together next year's roster.
Yeah, but then you have guys like Malik Brown who could come back, and then obviously we're talking about the freshmen like Cooper Flagg's probably going to the draft, Colin Malawak probably going to the draft as well, and then you have your questions of Akan Kneppel or as Isaiah Evans. And then you mentioned with guys transferring, but then also you have to remember guys are going to come in too, right?
Yeah.
So and I think John Shire did a really good job at maybe not going after the best player in the transfer portal, like the best skilled player, but going for the right fits. So obviously we'll have to wait and see how that all shakes out on the court this season. But I think right now you have to have trust that this coaching staff is going to hit a couple in the high school recruiting circuit because they still have nobody right now in the class of 2025. So I think you have to have faith that they are going to hit a couple of prospects and get a couple of commitments. And then also in the offseason, they're going to go to work in the transfer portal too.
Yeah, looking at next year's roster, if you go a front court of Malik Brown, Pat Ngamba coming back for another season, and then Cameron Boozer on the inside, I think that's pretty awesome. I'd love to see that. All right, next question. Again, mailbag here today on Locked On Blue Devils. Kevin, we were asked, what is your favorite early season college basketball tournament? In the spirit of schedules coming out here, we'll get the ACC schedule a little bit later tonight, but what's your favorite early season college basketball tournament?
Being a New York guy, and all that, I loved the preseason NIT when it was in the Garden. I loved that. I know it was the 2K Classic. Duke was in it. I'm pretty sure they beat Georgetown in the championship a couple of years ago. So it's changed names over the past couple of seasons. But that one 4-team tournament in Madison Square Garden, I always thought was a lot of fun. I was able to go to a couple of those games, so that was great. But I think the one that everybody loves and everybody loves to watch is the Maui Invitational. I think that's the big tournament that just everyone has circled. There's always great matchups, and it's always fun to watch on TV, especially when it's on the island in Maui. Obviously, the past couple of seasons, it had to be moved because of, I think they had a really bad hurricane or storm out there. The wildfires, excuse me, that's what it was. And then obviously with COVID, so it wasn't always in. I'm forgetting the name of the gym, but it's almost like a high school gym. It's like AAU for those guys, and just the environment and all that. It's really fun to watch on television.
Maui in 2024, the Lahaina Civic Center. That's the name that we were both looking for there. Maui 2024, Auburn, Colorado, Dayton, Iowa State, Memphis, Michigan State, UNC, and UConn. Plenty of reason for Duke fans to want to kind of watch that tournament with big-name programs being there. Nolan Smith now on Memphis' staff. UNC, of course, always gets some eyeballs. Auburn will play Duke at Cameron, so that's a future opponent on this year's schedule for the Blue Devils. I like the battle for Atlantis, too, Kevin, there in the Bahamas, because you talk about venues. Just when you're watching it on TV, it looks like this is, and it is, a ballroom almost that we've turned into a full basketball court that's got some high major games being played.
Yeah, the Battle for Atlantis is certainly a fun one. Obviously, another tropical place to play basketball that you get turned into a makeshift basketball court. So that's another one that's certainly high up on my list.
All right, well, let's go ahead, and we've got one more timeout to take here on the show and a couple of more questions to answer as we start to wrap up this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We saw some really exciting Monday Night Football games last night, 2 of them in one night. Pretty awesome stuff. So when you get in the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It's NFL action. The NFL week gets started this Thursday. NFC East matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants, and you can see all of that fun action over at FanDuel. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson. He's Kevin Connelly. He's on X at Kevin Connelly24, and he's the site expert for Ball Durham. Tell us a little bit about the website, Kevin.
Over at Ball Durham, we got everything you could possibly want on Duke athletics, specifically Duke football and Duke men's basketball. We have content up there daily, and we cover just about everything in terms of games, opinions, news and notes, recruiting, everything you could possibly want. So come read us over at balldurham.com.
I can't wait to check out all the latest stories over the next few days as we build up to this Duke football game against UNC, and then again, basketball season right around the corner. A couple of more questions to answer here on this mailbag episode today. Again, thank you for sending in all the questions to our Twitter page at LO_Blue Devils or emails lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com. We're going to post these questions in the description of our YouTube video here. And so let us know in the comments how you would answer them, your thoughts on our takes here with this one. So how might Duke's starting lineup evolve throughout the season? We've seen it evolve a good bit over the years, and particularly the last few with some injuries. I think about Caleb Foster's injury last season in particular to impact this team. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
It's a good question because, barring injury, that was going to be my first topic to this question. Barring injury, I don't see it evolving much at all. But obviously, you look at Caleb Foster, who you can't call injury prone. just because he had the ankle injury last year and missed time. But Tyrese Proctor has missed time now as a freshman and a sophomore with some injury issues. So again, barring injury, I don't think it evolves that much because I think you have four people locked into your starting lineup right now with Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, Cooper Flagg, and Common Malawach. And then I think obviously that other spot is still up for grabs. And I think maybe over the first couple of games, you could see a rotation of who gets the start. Obviously, people are going to talk about Sion James. You look at a Malik Brown. Could he start at a 4 and you start Cooper Flagg at the 3? Could you start a guy like Isaiah Evans? Con Kneppel, can he start? So I think really it is that last starter spot that's up for grabs because, like I said, barring injury, I don't really see the other 4 starters changing unless a guy like Common Malawach is having a tough time adjusting to the college game, and you want to bring him off the bench for a couple of games and see how he reacts to that and see how the team reacts to that. So that's probably of the 4 that I think are solidified. That's probably the only one that I could see changing barring injury. I think the other 3 are just about locked into a start every single time they're healthy in Proctor, Foster, and Flagg.
And throughout the course of the year, again, injuries are something we don't want to have to worry about, but there's a real reality that sets in that could happen throughout the course of the season. And so definitely want to make sure that Duke is in a good bill of health and that we're not having to worry too much about some of those injury possibilities that could affect a starting lineup and that sort of thing. So, Kevin, as we move forward, last question here due up for you and I today. Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we will see the ACC basketball schedule released on the ACC network with Taylor Tannenbaum, Randolph Childress, Seth Greenberg, and Luke Hancock a part of the coverage. What are you looking forward to seeing when that ACC basketball schedule is released?
You know, I'm going to go with a little bit different answer than probably a lot of people would think. I mean, obviously, you're looking for the North Carolina games, some of the other big conference matchups like a Virginia. Let's see when these new ACC schools pop up on the Duke basketball schedule. You know, you get home games with Cal and Stanford this year. You go to SMU, and I still think it's going to take some adjusting. Maybe everyone's got to get adjusted to it during football season and seeing those teams play. Like we just saw last week, Cal play Florida State and Stanford playing Syracuse. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing when I think Duke draws the better end of the stick, only having to go to Texas this year instead of having to make a couple of trips out to California during conference play. So I am looking forward to seeing when those 3 games are going to come up on the conference schedule.
And the other thing we're always looking at is, you know, the ACC has the big deal with ESPN to have primetime Monday night games following Saturday matchups. And as you look at the course of a basketball season, kind of the schedule breaks that you might have, how many consecutive games do you have on the road? How many straight games is Duke going to be able to play in conference play at Cameron Indoor? But then also, what are those Saturday, Monday split ups? Duke will probably have 2 or 3 that appear on their schedule throughout the course of this season. Is it a road game on Saturday and then quick turnaround to travel elsewhere on Monday, or traveling in and getting set for a Monday night game? How difficult are the opponents? Kind of those quick turnaround games are something that I'm going to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, and I think you always cross your fingers that you don't want it to be the game after North Carolina, because now how the schedule has kind of developed over the past couple of years. North Carolina games are both on Saturdays. There was always one on the first one, or excuse me, the first one was during the week, and the second one was always on a Saturday. So you don't want it to be you have that Saturday, Monday turnaround after the North Carolina game, win or lose, just because of how much emotion goes into one of those games, and how quickly with just one day off to turn around and perhaps travel to somewhere else on that Sunday. So I think that's the one thing you don't want to have. You don't want to have a big Monday game coming off the heels of the North Carolina game.
I didn't even think about that, man. But what if we get 18 teams now in the league? What if all of a sudden we're back to playing a midweek game against students? You got to keep them both on Saturday, though. I think that's what I love it, that they're both on Saturday now, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I think there was some intrigue during the week with it, having one of those 9 o'clock starts on like a Wednesday, either in Durham or Chapel Hill, and then obviously your typical like 6 o'clock start at final Saturday of the regular season. But I am a fan of having them both on Saturday, late afternoon, early evenings.
We'll see what happens a little bit later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on the ACC network when the schedule is released. Kevin, one more time before you head out of here, promote your work, my friend.
So again, it's balldurham.com. Come read us every single day. We have content up daily, and you can read everything you could possibly want on Duke football and Duke basketball.
Go check it all out. Kevin, thanks for the time. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring us here to a close. Excited to see how the schedule shapes up for the Duke basketball team. We'll have more thoughts on that and this big football game coming up against UNC throughout the course of the rest of this week. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.